The state of emergency issued by the national government in the penitentiary system to control violence gets to an end this Tuesday in Ecuador. Saint Vincent and the Grenadines is the first country in the Caribbean community, CARICOM, to authorize the use of Cuban COVID-19 vaccine Abdala. Israel carried out a missile strike on Tuesday against a container depot in the Syrian port city of Latakia. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The state of emergency issued by the national government in the penitentiary system to control violence gets to an end this Tuesday in Ecuador. The measure was decreed on September 30th by President Guillermo Lasso after a prison riot in the city of Guayaquil left 119 dead. The state of emergency for serious social unrest was renewed by the president in November after a new situation of violence in the same penitentiary resulted in 68 deaths and dozens of wounded. In both cases, the government's decision allowed the police and armed forces to be mobilized to reinforce security in the country's prisons. The executive informed that despite the end of the measure, the military will continue to guard the prisons. Honduras Court of Electoral Justice confirms the appeals of candidates for mayors and deputies of different political parties. In Monday's conference, the president of the council detailed that of the appeals filed, 20 appeals request jurisdictional recount or vote by vote, 1 complaint for electoral crime, 1 appeal against the definitive census, 5 appeals against the resolution denying administrative action in the council, 1 for administrative nullity, and 2 that leave the appellant without registration. In Peru, President Pedro Castillo will testify before the Public Prosecutor's Office on the case of the investigation of alleged executive interference in the last promotion process in the armed forces. The statement is scheduled for this Tuesday at 11 o'clock local time by representatives of the country's prosecutor's office, according to the executive's lawyer Eduardo Pachas. He also explains that all facilities will be provided to the authorities for the interrogation to be held at the government's palace. Finally, the president's legal representatives pointed out that it has not yet been confirmed whether it will be the prosecutor Avalos Rivera herself who will take the statement, but that his office has confirmed that his office will be in charge of the procedure. We stay in Peru as the government announced it will subsidize the families of victims of repression, as well as relatives of those who died in the mobilizations carried out in late 2020. Peru's government published the authorization for the exceptional and one-time economic delivery to those seriously injured in the mobilizations that took place between November the 10th and 14th, December 1st and 3rd, and December 20th and 30th, 2020. The measure was taken through Emergency Decree number 114/2021, which specifies that the economic recovery and delivery is not compensatory or reparatory in nature and will be financed by the budget assigned to the Ministry of Justice and the Human Rights of the Indian country. According to governmental data, about 12 farm workers died during the repression of the demonstrations against the agrarian law of the government of former President Martín Vizcarra. In Colombia, the annual report from the Institute of Peace Studies and Development in the past reveals that some 93 massacres were perpetrated in the country and at least 48 signatories of the peace agreements were killed during 2021. In the study titled Figures of Violence in the Regions 2021 in the Past gathers events that occurred during the 1st of January and December 24th. The document details that at least 326 people died in these massacres, which occurred in 20 departments of the country. The assassinations against social leaders were concentrated in 108 municipalities, where at least 55 indigenous people, 29 community leaders, and 37 leaders of different social organizations lost their lives. Argentina's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reiterated its offer to carry out humanitarian flights in the Falkland Island, Islas Malvinas, and confirms that it has everything in place to allow the residents to travel to the cities of origin to see to matters of interest. The government has offered 2 charter flights with Argentinian Airlines to solve the problem of the Falkland, or Malvinas, the residents mostly of Chilean origin and who have been stranded since the beginning of the pandemic. Since March 2020, when the first COVID-19 quarantine came into effect, all regular flights to the islands were suspended, and for this reason, the coordination of humanitarian flights has been recommended. Also, in reiterating the proposal, the Argentinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs remarked that its offer intends to contribute to overcome the negative consequences of the pandemic. Now we address other topics. More than 26,000 hectares were devastated by forest fires in central and southern Chile, tripling the affected areas reported in 2020. As of Sunday, there were at least 21 active outbreaks and 179 fires, which have devastated homes and have left at least 4 people injured while fighting the flames. One of the most complex scenarios was experienced in the region of Ñuble, where the hectares reduced by fire amount to more than 1,000. Due to these fires, several towns in the sector were evacuated. Among the causes of the situation are the low humidity and high temperatures. These conditions will continue during the summer and will lead to the appearance of new outbreaks. The governor of the Brazilian state of Bahia, Rui Costa, has warned of an unprecedented flood disaster as the emergency situation has already been declared in 72 cities, 58 of which are underwater. Following the impact of the rains, the state has decreed 72 cities in emergency conditions. With this declaration, the mobilization of all state agencies has been authorized to support disaster response and recovery actions. Up to this Sunday, there were almost 20,000 people who had to leave their homes and who do not necessarily need shelter, and 16,000 had lost their homes. The National Meteorological Institute and the National Center for Monitoring and Warning of Natural Disasters are maintaining the alert for the risk of new floods and landslides in Bahia due to the accumulated rains in the last few days and the forecast of new precipitations. A snowstorm in the United States caused the closure of highways in the states of Nevada and California. In the city of Reno, authorities warned of difficulties to traveling to Sierra Nevada. They also informed that 3 people were injured in a collision that involved at least 20 vehicles. Meanwhile, the California Department of Transportation also closed down a passage to the mountain, explaining that the roads were too slippery for drivers. In this way, the Meteorological Service issued a warning for winter storm of the metropolitan area for Lake Tahoe until Tuesday morning. Likewise, the competent authorities explained that the fall weather conditions are present from San Diego all the way to Seattle. We'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Saint Vincent and the Grenadines is the first country in the Caribbean community, CARICOM, to authorize the use of Cuban COVID-19 vaccine Abdala. The Drug Control Center in Havana authorized Abdala for emergency use last July, after confirming that the results of an initial study conducted by the Genetic Engineering Center found an efficacy rate of more than 92% in the prevention of COVID-19. Cuban vaccine will help raise vaccination rates in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, where barely 30% of the population has received at least 1 dose of any anti-coverall vaccine, and just over 23% have completed the immunization schedule. schedule. The number of COVID-19 cases in the United States has increased 83% in the last 14 days and is causing the healthcare network to be stretched to the limit in several states. The Omicron variant is responsible for 3 out of 4 cases detected. Due to the new wave of contagions, thousands of domestic and international flights have been cancelled. As a result of crew losses, and businesses have had to close. Supporting events and other artistic activities have been suspended. The situation is even more critical because tens of millions of U.S. citizens have not received a single dose of the anti-COVID-19 vaccine, which complicates the health forecasts. In this regard, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, acknowledged that the health system could collapse in several regions of the country.
It had made progress. Things are better. But we do know that with the rising cases, we still have tens of millions of unvaccinated people, and we're seeing hospitalizations rise. It means our hospitals in some places are going to get overrun, but in terms of equipment, both in terms of equipment and staff.
The Omicron variant is affecting the world's major powers while setting record infection forecasts for the beginning of the next year. The Omicron variant represents a major setback to the recovery of the world economy, while tourism and other sectors register huge losses. The most evident signs in the United States alone are restaurants that closed due to staff contagion, leisure and sport events suspended, as well as thousands of domestic and international flights cancelled due to crew reduction. In the country, Omicron already accounts for 3/4 of the infections, with an 83% increase in cases in the last 14 days. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom, France and Italy are also expecting an increase in the number of infections. We move on to other topics. The traditional meeting of the heads of state and governments from the Community of Independent States, the CIS, will take place this Tuesday in Russia at the initiative of President Vladimir Putin. Heads of state and government of the Community of Independent States will discuss measures to enhance the effectiveness of cooperation and to boost socio-economic development at their traditional meeting. The agenda includes an analysis of the results of Belarus' presidency over the last year and to discuss problems that affect the former Soviet nations. Putin has described the group as solid in areas of security and economy and has urged for a wider exchange in the battle against coronavirus and the development of COVID drugs. The community was formed in 1991, and since then the ties have been solid, including the creation of common enterprises and projects.
Many things have changed dramatically over the years, but at the same time, I'd like to stress that the creation of this organization was certainly worth it. The integration has been increasing on many tracks and in various aspects, including state security, economy. I have to say that the connections between the countries preserved since the Soviet Union are playing a positive role.
In Denver, Colorado, a shooting resulted in 4 people killed and a police officer injured on Monday night. According to Lakewood police reports, the suspect also died after a fire exchange with the officers. The shooting started shortly after 5 p.m. local time in central Denver, where 2 women were killed and a man was injured. A short time later, a man was fatally shot several blocks away. The wounded officer was undergoing surgery on Monday night, and his condition was not immediately known. 2021 was a brutal year for gun violence in the U.S., where communities across the country experienced a heartbreaking increase in homicides and shootings. The rise started in 2020, when homicides rose by 30% from the year before. The increase amounted to an estimated 5,000 additional deaths. The full data for 2021 is not yet available, but the rise appears to have continued, with homicides in cities such as Oakland, Portland, and Detroit continue to climb. And we stay in the U.S. 2 children were killed and another 3 minors were hospitalized with injuries, where a car plowed into them and fled the scene in South Florida on Monday, authorities said. The Broward County Sheriff's Office said in a news release that it was investigating what happened outside an apartment building in Wilton Manors, Florida, along with the Wilton Manors Police and Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue. The Sheriff's Office didn't immediately provide ages for any of the children. The Wilton Manor Police Department tweeted that a family Reunification Center was set up at the City Hall Emergency Operations Center.
It was a hit and run, and the driver fled, and detectives are looking into the circumstances around how exactly it happened. This is a heartbreaking evening for everyone, for family, friends, and for the first responders that responded to the scene. Detectives are asking if anyone has any information, saw this happen, please call Broward Crime Stoppers. You know that.
And China's foreign ministry said on Tuesday the United States has to abide by the Outer Space International Treaty and take responsible measures to protect the safety of astronauts.
I can responsibly confirm to everyone that in July and October this year, Starlink satellites launched by SpaceX made 2 close encounters with China's space station. During this period, Chinese astronauts were carrying out missions at the space station. Out of safety considerations, the Chinese space station adopted emergency measures to avoid collisions. The US talks about the concept of so-called responsible conduct in outer space, but ignores its obligations under international treaties, posing a serious threat to the lives and safety of astronauts. This is a typical case of double standards.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Israel carried out a missile strike on Tuesday against a container depot in the Syrian port city of Latakia. According to the state agency ZANA, a military source of the Arab country stated that around 3:21 a.m. local time, Israeli forces attacked with missiles from deep in the Mediterranean west of Latakia, targeting the container yard at the commercial port. The Israeli aggression causes fires at the site and left extensive material damage, and work is still underway to extinguish the flames. The Israeli regime frequently launches missile attacks against targets in Syria. On December the 7th, the port of Latakia had already been the target of a similar attack. And the nuclear discussions resumed in Vienna, with Iran insisting on making a truly lasting and mutually assuring agreement, focused on the lifting of sanctions that followed the backing out of the U.S. of the deal in 2018. The 8th round of talks in Vienna over the joint nuclear agreement began with the tensions in the air, as European parties expressed their hesitancy regarding Tehran's petition to lift the sanctions imposed unilaterally by the Trump administration in 2018. Since late November, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi's government has bet on a clear approach on the subject, guaranteeing a strict abidance to the accord in case of it be signed as long as the U.S. keeps up the demanded assurances. Despite the importance of this deal for global geopolitics, Western powers show with their behavior that it is more important for them to economically and commercially suffocate an entire nation, regardless the impact on the citizens, the most affected by this policy line, than to focus on peace and balance. The Iranian Foreign Ministry on Monday urged countries taking part in the 8th round of nuclear talks in Vienna to attend the negotiations with the determination to reach a good agreement.
If all parties at the Vienna talks can abide by the agenda, the negotiation may end quickly, and we will see a good result in this round.
Khatibzadeh also emphasized on the need to lift the unilateral coercive measures against Iran in order to make progress in the negotiations on the nuclear agreement signed in 2015.
Now we have 2 new documents on the nuclear issue and on the lifting of sanctions. Our negotiators are particularly concerned about the lifting of sanctions and want to see the other side show seriousness and reach a meaningful agreement within the framework of international law.
Dozens of Afghan women staged a demonstration in Kabul, calling for human rights and accusing the Taliban government of killing members of the former regime. Members of the Afghanistan Women's Political Participation Network protested in a closed area in Kabul, demanding rights to education, work, and political participation. At the same time, they claimed that the Taliban were killing members of the former government and ex-soldiers. The protest comes as the Taliban government imposes new restrictions on the mobility of women who cannot travel alone within 70 kilometers of their homes. We want this group for the 1,000th time to stop its criminal machine. Former members and government employees are under direct threat. These open criminal acts and broken promises are against the general amnesty eliminate women from society. They are not only killing men, but they have been eliminating the women as well. They don't even allow the women to get out of their homes without a male chaperone. And new attacks of Saudi invasion troops took place in residential Yemen. The Yemeni armed forces announced that they managed to free all Yatama and surrounding locations in the El Jauf governorship. The artillery of the Saudi coalition bombarded army control zones and communities south of Hodeidah. Local media reported 7 civilians injured and the persisting raids of the invading army in Yemen's capital. Also, a military source from the persisting government informed that the Saudi coalition has committed 92 human rights violations in the fronts south of Hodeidah in the last 24 hours. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.